Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. I apologize for a little delay in coming, but we have special privilege and special honor to welcome the presidential panel for the first time in the history of GlobSec. My name is Rastislav Káčer. I'm the president of Slovak Atlantic Commission. And today, in the 7th annual GlobSec, that's my special privilege and honor to open the second day of GlobSec with 3 presidents. And this presidential coming panel is geared towards the broader vision in European integration and with special focus on the region of Balkans. Our first president of the Slovak Republic, Ivan Gašparovič, needs no introduction at all. Second is President Danilo Türk, President of Republic of Slovenia, who is on the official visit to Slovakia, hosted by President Gašparovič. Third president is President Ivo Josipović, President of the Republic of Croatia. They are all bound by distinguished legal and lawyers' career. I can see, I've never seen so, coherent and consistent panel in the distinguished career in the law. But what is even more important to me is to say that even this may be a little biased panel, because truly some Croatian heritage is also in the blood of our president. It almost looks like we are hosting a special Balkan panel, but when you look around vicinity of Bratislava, you find that the heritage of Croatia is very strong and present here, and maybe that is why they do such a good white wine here around in Slovakia. But without any further ado, taking time from the presidents, let me invite President Gašparovič to the floor to begin with his introduction remarks, and then President Türk and President Josipović. Pán prezident, nech sa páči.
Vážení páni prezidenti, vážený pán predsedajúci, dámy a páni. Na začiatku vám ďakujem za pozvanie na 7. ročník tejto medzinárodnej konferencie o globálnej bezpečnosti. Ja si myslím, že jej súčasné načasovanie je mimoriadne vhodné, pretože súčasná medzinárodná politika rieši otázky konsolidácie globálnej ekonomickej a finančnej bezpečnosti. Európa stabilizáciou eurozóny a novými pravidlami fungovania únie. Severoatlantická aliancia pred summitom v Chicagu spôsob ukončenia svojej misie v Afganistane, ale aj perspektívu svojej vnútornej reformy, o ktorej už hovoríme veľmi dlho. Konferencie, ako je táto dnešná, majú ambíciu pomáhať politikom tvoriť vízie a výjsť aj za hranice svojich, by som povedal, partajných politík. V tomto zmysle pokladám vaše úsilie za veľmi užitočné. Viem, že už teraz ste si pripomenuli 10. výročie Pražského samitu NATO a pozvanie Slovenskej republiky a ostatných 6 krajín medzi nimi i Slovenska do aliancie. Chcem sa pripojiť k tejto spomienke. Aj dnes toto rozhodnutie spred 10 rokov určite všetci hodnotíme ako úspešné pokračovanie vízie budovania celostnej a slobodnej Európy. Je ako potvrdenie zásadného strategického civilizačného smerovania nášho Slovenska. Dámy a páni, som rád, že v dnešnom paneli môžem vystúpiť spolu s mojimi priateľmi, prezidentom Slovenska Danilom Türkom a prezidentom Chorvátska Ivom Josipovičom. V ich prítomnosti vidím aj takú určitú symboliku. Lebo ak my polemizujeme o vnímaní bezpečnosti v Európe, oni lepšie vedia, o čom je reč. Oni majú v živej pamäti reálny strach o bezpečnosť svojich rodín, svojich spoluobčanov v dramatickom čase osamostatňovania sa v dôsledku rozpadu bývalej Juhoslávie. Som presvedčený, že práve ich historická pamäť ich tak silnejšie motivuje k hĺbšej integrácii krajín do nášho európskeho, ale i euroatlantického spoločenstva. Hovorím to preto, lebo sa mi stále viac zdá, že s postupným odchodom generácií, ktoré poznali utrpenie z druhej svetovej vojny, v Európe sa oslabuje vnímanie Európskej únie ako bezpečnostného projektu. Do popredia sa posúva jej ekonomický a politický rozmer. Pritom projekt Európskeho spoločenstva vznikol ako priama ochrana pred ďalšou vojnovou konfrontáciou v Európe. Toto potláčanie bezpečnostného aspektu únie korešponduje so zjednodušeným vnímaním európskej bezpečnosti novou generáciou európskych politických lídrov. Viacerí z nich považujú otázku kolektívnej bezpečnosti za vyriešenú vznikom Severoatlantickej aliancie, jej rozširovaním a dominantnou úlohou Spojených štátov amerických v nej. Čím ďalej, tým viac je jasnejšie, že sa mýlia. Mýlia sa v čom? Hádam, ešte nikdy v histórii nebolo prepojenie medzi ekonomickou a finančnou stabilitou a bezpečnosťou sveta také silné a intenzívne, aké je dneska. Popri tzv. Asymetrických hrozbách, akými sú napríklad medzinárodný politický či počítačový terorizmus, náboženský radikálny fundamentalizmus, nevymizli ani klasické bezpečnostné hrozby 20. storočia. Veď napríklad podľa Štokholmského medzinárodného inštitútu pre výskum mieru globálny obchod s konvenčnými zbraňami sa za ostatných 5 rokov v roku 2007 až 2011 v porovnaní s predchádzajúcimi 5 rokmi od roku 2002 do 2006 zvýšil takmer o 24%. Veľká časť tohto zbrojného materiálu končí v rýchlo sa rozvíjajúcich azijských krajinách. Je to ozaj znepokojujúca tendencia. To hovorím o vonkajšej bezpečnosti. Rovnako znepokojujúci je však aj trend domáceho vývoja vo viacerých európskych krajinách. Koľko materiálnych hodnôt bolo zničených v dôsledku násilných demonštrácií? Aké názory prevládajú u našej mládeže? Neoživuje sa v niektorých európskych krajinách populistický šovinizmus? Je naša demokracia dnes bezpečnejšia než pred 20 rokmi? Môže byť bezpečnejšia, keď dôvera v tých, ktorí vládnu, stále klesá? Tieto problémy reálne existujú a my sa nemôžeme tváriť, že ich nevidíme. Odpovede na tieto otázky napádajú k reforme alebo prinajmenšom k takej, by som povedal, náprave a konsolidácii domácich politík, ale aj veľkej globálnej európskej politiky. V tomto kontexte náš spoločný zápas o zachovanie mieru, o obnovenie stability eurozóny a o vnútornú reformu únie vnímame na Slovensku aj ako zápas o posilnenie bezpečnostného a obranného rozmeru Európskej únie. O bezpečnosť a budúcnosť Európy ako takej. Viac ako kedykoľvek predtým si uvedomujeme úzkú prepojenosť ekonomickej výkonnosti a prosperity s bezpečnostnými ukazovateľmi. Naše domáce úsilie o ozdravenie a udržateľnosť verejných financií, o podporu Európskeho stabilizačného mechanizmu i za cenu istých obetí a o vytvorenie životaschopnej únie fiškálnej stability je dneska súčasťou tohto zápasu. Vo svojom konaní však musíme byť aj tak trochu úprimní. Stojíme pred vážnymi demografickými problémami. Zaostávame v raste vysokých technológií, inovácií, kvalitného školstva a sofistikovaných služieb. Vo výdavkoch na výskum, na inovácie a vysoké školstvo zaostávame o polovicu za americkými 2,7% HDP. Vo vojenskej oblasti vynakladáme o 50% menej prostriedkov na obranu než Spojené štáty. Pretrvávanie týchto parametrov do budúcna bude ďalej oslabovať význam Únie ako globálneho hráča a pravdepodobne i relevantnosť Severoatlantickej aliancie ako doteraz najstabilnejšej organizácie kolektívnej bezpečnosti vo svete. Pretože určite všetci vnímame, že aj aliancia sa mení. V ostatných rokoch cítime v NATO tlak na zvyšovanie našej európskej zodpovednosti za bezpečnosť Európy a jej kontinentálneho susedstva. Spojené štáty presúvajú pozornosť i kapacity iným smerom a prenechávajú nám väčší priestor v našej primárnej zóne záujmu. Je to pre Európu, som presvedčený, veľká výzva, ktorá však prichádza v súčasnosti nie vo veľmi vhodnom čase. V Európe máme problémy s udržaním našej meny, s udržaním pozitívneho ekonomického vývoja, s konsolidáciou našich rozpočtových deficitov. Snažíme sa udržať pri živote rozširovanie aliancie, ale zároveň zároveň musíme sa postarať o to, aby sme do budúcna možno nevytvárali nové železné opony. Ako v tejto situácii najsprávny východ aliancie z terajšej križovatky a zároveň nestratiť Spojené štáty americké ako kľúčového atlantického partnera? Možno, že čas odpovede som naznačil pred chvíľou. Ozdraviť verejné financie každého člena. Intenzívne spolu komunikovať a najmä preskúpiť zdroje a zvýšiť tlak na investície do inovácií a nových technológií. To však určite nebude stačiť, preto by sme mali využiť doterajšiu skúsenosť s mobilizáciou našich zdrojov pri záchrane eura a spoločným úsilím sa sústrediť na intenzívnejšie spájanie obranných kapacít a zdrojov podľa konceptu spájať a zdieľať. Je to, som presvedčený, súčasť procesu, ktorý generálny tajomník NATO Rasmussen pomenoval ako inteligentnú obranu. Bol by to aj praktický základ takého základného a reálneho strategického partnerstva aliancie v Európskej únii. A keďže musíme stáť oboma nohami pevne na zemi, diskutujeme aj o ceste istého zníženia vojenských ambícií aliancie, ak to pomôže jej vnútornému prerodu. Aj toto sú témy, o ktorých bude potrebné diskutovať pred, ale aj na samite aliancie v Chicagu. Čo v tejto situácii môžu robiť členské krajiny, ako je napríklad naše Slovensko? Aj slovenskí politici sa dopustili rovnakých chýb a po vstupe do NATO odsunuli bezpečnostné otázky na okraj, by som povedal, na okraj politického záujmu. Musia preto riešiť rovnaké problémy ako väčšina európskych členov Európskej únie a aliancie. To znamená sústrediť sa na zdieľanie vojenských spôsobilostí a výcviku, na spoločné financovanie, cieľavedomejšiu spoluprácu s obranným priemyslom, na posilnenie programov medzinárodnej spolupráce. V našom prípade prednostne so spojencami z Vyšehradskej skupiny. Už sme začali práce na konkrétnych projektoch, napríklad na vytvorení spoločnej bojovej skupiny V4 v roku 2016. A v neposlednom rade využiť našu účasť v zahraničných operáciách tak, aby poskytovala čo najväčšiu pridanú hodnotu pre rozvoj ozbrojených síl Slovenskej republiky. Vážené dámy a páni, dovolte mi na záver zhrnúť hlavné myšlienky môjho úvodného vystúpenia do takých podob téz. Bezpečnostná agenda je v európskej politike dlhodobo poddimenzovaná, čo znižuje relevantnosť Európy ako partnera pri riešení globálnych otázok. Za druhé, Spojené štáty vytvárajú v NATO stále väčší priestor pre zodpovednosť európskym spojencom a je iba na nás, ako s touto zodpovednosťou naložíme. Bude to mať vplyv na budúci význam a atraktívnosť aliancie i na podobu strategického partnerstva Európska únia NATO. V Európskej únii i v NATO sa budeme musieť sústrediť na ozdravenie verejných financií každého člena, preskupenie a zdieľanie zdrojov a kapacít na projekty inteligentnej obrany, na cieľavedomé investície do inovácií a nových technológií. V neposlednom rade sa budeme musieť viac zamerať na ďalšie prehlbenie strategického partnerstva Európska únia a NATO. Pretože naši spoluobčania sa nás budú stále častejšie pýtať, prečo táto prirodzená väzba a spolupráca oboch organizácií ostáva tak neuveriteľne vágná. Na to budeme asi musieť dať našim občanom odpoveď. Ďakujem pekne.
Ďakujem pekne, pán prezident. Ďakujem pekne, pán prezident. And now I would like to invite to the floor His Excellency President Danilo Turk, President of Republic of Slovenia.
Thank you for the opportunity that you have given me to speak at this Global Security Forum here in Bratislava. I'm very pleased to be here, and I'm particularly pleased to be a member of what was described a very coherent panel. Now, coherence, of course, is an important quality which we have. We are three presidents. All three of us are jurists by training, and all three of us are coming from countries which have similar worldviews and similar views on security and cooperation in Europe and globally. And that in itself would guarantee a high degree of coherence in our talk. But in addition to that, I would like to say that the basic analysis which was just offered by President Ivan Gasparovic was something that I fully share. These are basic, fundamental premises which he described with great eloquence, and where I think we should all continue in our reflection with thoughts related to the global or general framework of international security issues today and the focus which we need to have in addressing them. Now, I believe that this forum is a very valuable opportunity for discussion of these matters, especially because this is not a diplomatic conference where one represents governments in terms of positions and proposals, but rather shares with others views, reflections on fundamental questions as well as on priority questions, those which are made priority by the events on the ground, by the way the international security landscape is changing. In this spirit, I would like to offer a few thoughts on both framework and focus, which I believe are important today, and where discussions like this and forums like this should make their own contributions. First, on security in the broadest sense. What is the framework of global security that we have to keep in mind as a basis for discussion on more specific priorities, both related to specific challenges to security and to matters essential for the maintenance of long-term security? I believe that we have to come back to some of the fundamentals of geostrategic thought which were developed in the first half of the 20th century by thinkers like Hartford Mackinder and Carl Schmitt with his idea of the Grossräume. Now, I think that the time is ripe for a very careful reflection on how should the three large areas of the world, United States, Europe, and Russia, interact for the future. Are they to move in a direction of competition? Are they to move in a direction of insufficient mutual understanding and trust? Or should they move in the direction of strengthened cooperation, strengthened confidence, and, if possible, a coherent security framework? And I'm talking about these three large areas and three large players as a system. This question is not too ambitious, and it is discussed in literature. One of the most recent pieces written by Zbigniew Brzezinski, I believe, gave us a lot of good ideas about how these questions should be approached. And my basic suggestion for the discussion today would be that the world needs a coherent process which will continuously bring together, which will strengthen the Euro-Atlantic alliance and bringing closer to Russia, and make sure that the convergence between Russia and the Euro-Atlantic space continues and is continuously strengthened. This, I believe, is the framework. Now, the question of focus. What are the kind of questions that have to be in the center of thought on this kind of basic strategic directions for the future? There are some which are already obvious, like missile defense system. I believe that the discussions that have been held so far have been useful and will have to continue. This year is perhaps not the best year for a detailed and forward-looking discussion. Maybe there is a need for reflection now. But towards the end of the year and later, the Euro-Atlantic Alliance and Russia would have to come together for a very serious discussion on missile defense with an aim to make that system, to create a system which would strengthen their mutual trust and which will make them coherent, not only compatible. The second priority, which I believe is critical, is further expansion of NATO. We have had expansion of NATO so far, but I believe that further steps have to be taken, especially in the Balkans. Montenegro is a country which may not be geographically large, but which is moving towards membership of NATO, and that's something that should not be lost sight of. And there are other countries in the region of the Balkans which are waiting in the line. And the third focal question is crisis management. It is very important that in the current dealings with the crisis in Syria, it became possible to bring together the P5, the permanent members of the Security Council, behind a single concept expressed in the six-point plan by Kofi Annan. Let us make every effort that this concept survives. This may be difficult to implement. This may be difficult to succeed. But this is the only game in town. This is the only proposal with some hope for success. And it is the proposal which merits full support. And it will be an important contribution, if it succeeds, to global stability and global security. Now, this is as much as I would like to say about the global security questions and NATO for the purposes of introduction. I understand that we'll have an opportunity to discuss these questions, and if you have further thoughts or questions, I'll be happy to answer. But let me say a few words about the European Union as well. President Gasparovich has just explained that in the European Union we should not lose sight of the fact that the primary purpose of the Union is security. It's peace, stability, and security of Europe. Obviously, we are preoccupied with the economic and political matters these days, and there are important priorities to be put in the focus and questions that need to be resolved. The questions of fiscal stability are obviously matters of great priority, and they have to be given full attention. And I believe that one of the aspects which should not be forgotten in that specific context is that the solution of the questions of fiscal stability may require time. Sometimes politicians become impatient, and sometimes an expectation that the problem will be resolved quickly leads to further complications. So I think that in discussing the questions of fiscal stability in the area of euro and in the European Union more broadly, we have to be particularly attentive to the question of time frames. What are the kind of time frames in which the European Union can indeed secure full fiscal stability and thus create the basis for further economic growth and development? This is something that the European Council should be aware of. This is something that the European Council should devote its attention to. And this is something that the national politicians have to approach with great care. Obviously, it is good if we can solve problems as soon as possible, but sometimes as soon as possible may mean longer than expected. So therefore, I believe the question of timeframes is something which is not entirely in the focus today, but should be put in focus for the future. And then there are other matters which are more long-term in nature for the European Union. We have all become used to the institutional optimism of the European Union. A great deal is expected from treaties, from various legal instruments. Lisbon Treaty has been a big project, and great expectations have been attached to it. But we know that treaties in themselves do not provide final answers. Therefore, the institutional stability and institutional optimism, which constitutes the DNA of European Union, has to be supplemented by policies which create a functioning organism. Institutional optimism does not suffice. Now, what does that mean in political terms? I believe that the European Union has to come to a point at which a much stronger popular involvement in policy making will be necessary. I believe people in this room are all aware of writings of philosophers on this subject. Jürgen Habermas has for many years been very vocal on the need to supplement the intergovernmental processes and the bureaucratic processes of European Union with a more popular aspect, going beyond what is provided today by the European Parliament, being imaginative in terms of new techniques and methods of political organization. And I believe that the time is coming in which this kind of political questions will have to be put on the table. I'm mentioning these ideas today because I believe that the forum at which I'm speaking is an appropriate forum for reflection and thought. I know that solutions are not yet there, but we have to think about them in order to make them possible. These are the kind of thoughts I wish to share with you this morning. I'd be happy to hear your reactions, possibly critical reactions. And of course, if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, thank you very much for your very interesting introduction. And last speaker for the beginning is President Ivo Josipovic, the youngest member of the family of European and transatlantic nation. Mr. President, the floor is yours.
Thank you. President Gasparovic, President Türk, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, I would like to thank organizers for the opportunity to speak about very important issues, security, global security, and I'm really impressed by previous speakers. So I will try to add some specific thoughts on the region and Croatian position as a new coming European member. Firstly, as you know, Croatia finished our negotiations for the membership of the EU, and we signed accession treaty. I have to thank Slovakia and President Gasparovic for being the first country to ratify this treaty. All of us in Croatia, we expect all other friends from the Europe to do the same as soon as possible. So we finished our negotiations during the very severe economical crisis. Many people asked, is it possible that during this important and substantial crisis in Europe, you are willing to join this club? And from the other side, there was a question from the Europe, are we now capable to accept a country like Croatia, who has also, I have to admit, significant economical problems? But analyzing these solutions, our possibilities, and our wish to join EU and wish of EU to accept Croatia, we come to one of important key points stressed by President Türk. It's optimism. Croatian jointment to EU shows optimism not only in Croatia, but also in European Union. It shows vision that wider European Union can be key player not only in the Europe, on the territory of Europe, but also as a global player in the world. It also shows attractivity of European idea, attractivity for specific countries and attractivity for Union itself. Our citizens in Croatia were not afraid on European crisis. It's not just European, it's a worldwide crisis. And we understood our future membership as opportunity to develop further. During our negotiations, and those negotiations covered all areas of our social, economical, and political life, including security, Croatia became better society. And that's very important. Reforms that we undertook, reforms that we are planning to undertake in the future are really very important for Croatian society, for Croatian state. Our jointment will be a very important signal to the European Union, to Croatian citizens, but also for our neighbors in the region. Because Croatian example shows that all countries in Southeastern Europe are capable to transform society in modern European society and to contribute to security, to economical prosperity and democracy in the Europe. Definitely, security today is not only connected to threats, military threats or terrorism, but security also depends on economical situation, on development of science, education, climate changes, and of course, vision for the future. Looking to the future prosperity of European Union, I have to stress that Croatia is capable to contribute to European societies, to European states, by different means. Strategically, there are three very important facts. First one is that the quickest channel of communication for goods, people from Asia to Europe is through Croatia, through harbor Rijeka. It's very near to Slovenia, and it's also opportunity for our neighbors to participate in this communicational channel. And unfortunately, up to now, this channel is not used enough. Secondly, Croatia will have the longest border with some country that's not EU country. Our border with Bosnia and Herzegovina is 1,100 kilometers. And that will be the biggest, the longest border of European Union to non-European countries. And of course, this border is not pure border, it's opportunity. It's opportunity for economical growth, it's opportunity for infrastructural investments, and it's good opportunity for energy development. Thirdly, Croatia is part of Mid-Europe, and of course, this Mid-Europe is now is going to have a new partner, new European partner that can promote interest and capacities of this part of Europe. And then we come to one of important key questions. We are all small countries. Slovenia, Slovakia, and Croatia, small countries of relatively similar number of inhabitants and surface with similar economical possibilities. And then we have to ask ourselves, what can we do for ourselves? What can we do together for ourselves? And how we can contribute to Europe? Firstly, we have to resolve our problems. It will be the best contribution for ourselves and for the region and for the European Union as well. If we consider what are Croatian problems, our problems, especially with neighbors, comes from the war. That was the biggest security threat, and I have to confirm that there is no more important value than peace, security, and stability. So we consider our EU membership and EU membership of the other countries in the region as the biggest contribution to peace and stability, not only of the region, but of the Europe and the world as well. So if we consider what are problems, especially with Serbia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and Montenegro that we have also some small problem, border problem that will be resolved by arbitration with Slovenia. So border problem, refugees, missing persons, succession problem, economical problems. Those problems I mentioned are not easy to resolve. But now all countries in the region are cooperating and trying the best way how to resolve them. Secondly, we have to cooperate with sense of responsibility. Creating good relations with our neighborhood. We are creating good future for our kids. And in last years, I think everyone can recognize that relations between neighbors in the region are much, much better than several years ago. Of course, the role of international community, European Union, NATO, is really important. NATO and European Union and our wider neighborhood contributed to peace and stability in the region. It's very important that now Slovakia, Slovenia, and Croatia are NATO countries. It's very important for security and stability. We are together contributing all around the world to keep stability and peace. Especially, it's important to recognize our role in Afghanistan. But also, our cooperation is important for the region. It was declared several times that one of key points of Croatian foreign policy is to support our neighbors, namely Serbia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Montenegro, and the other from wider neighborhood, including Macedonia, Kosovo, to join EU as soon as possible. Of course, we understand that they have to fulfill requirements, as we did, but politically and technically, we are going to support them. I think they need support of Slovenia and Slovakia as well. And I recognize goodwill in all our countries to support our neighborhood to perform reforms and to qualify themselves for EU membership. And then all three countries need to use our common capacities to build something new and better. Firstly, we have common interests. And of course, now we are discussing economical interest and possibilities and capabilities our countries to act together on third markets, how to perform together on Western Balkans, or to perform common interest in China, or how to consider our interest concerning infrastructure in Brussels. Secondly, we have a very specific historical experience, and we have relations with many countries that are not members of EU in some specific, with some specific characteristic coming from our history, namely countries of Africa or Middle East. Historically, especially countries of former Yugoslavia had good contacts with countries from so-called non-aligned movement. And then, of course, we have capacity to perform our common interest in European institutions. Also, we have specific interest and specific experience in transition. Our countries had transition from so-called socialism, communism, to free market societies. Not all experiences are very good, I have to admit. But definitely, during this change, our economies became better, and now we are somehow in position to compete on European market. Of course, small countries will definitely have need to cooperate in this very sophisticated fight on the European market. Then we had second transition from non-democratic society to democracy. It's also a very important experience. This transition was painful, not always easy, but now I think in all our countries democracy is performed on very high level without any significant or any important failures. And our experience can be very important for new coming members in the region. And of course our experience is very important in the NATO, because contribution of all three countries shows that even small countries can significantly contribute to global security, and the example of Afghanistan is very important. Historical moment is very interesting, but very dangerous as well. Our security, stability is under different threats, and I'm sure that conferences like this can stress the most important issues and make some kind of political recommendation and inspiration for all the leaders to perform our duties better than before. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you very much, and thanks to all three presidents. Ladies and gentlemen, I look at my watch and I think we have about 10 minutes for a brief period of questions and answers. And it's very hard to see the hands. I see Minister Eide, and let me maybe pick a couple of questions, maybe 3 or 4 in a round, because I think that'll be just time for Mr. Minister. Then there is the lady behind Minister. There is one question over here and one question over there. 4 questions, and then will be 1 round of replies from presidents.
Thank you. I'm Espen Barth Eide, Minister of Defense of Norway. Thank you to all the President for excellent introductions. I was very much intrigued with what President Danilo Turk said about this competition or cooperation between Russia, Europe, and the US. And I basically have a simple but I think quite important question. How do you think the rise of Asia and the rise of China and the probability that the most important relationship in this century will be the US-Chinese relationship, how will that affect our dynamics in between the 3 powers that you mentioned? Because I think all 3 of them will not only be concerned with each other, but with the growing power in the East, and maybe particularly so Russia. although they speak less about it, I think they think quite a lot about it, and what does it mean for cooperation in our part of the world? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Second question was lady behind.
Thank you. Your Excellencies, I actually wanted to ask a question about kind of the same thing, global partnerships. You mentioned partnerships with the US and Russia and furthering dialogue, but my question is, with the shared historical transitions to democracy, do you not see now as the perfect opportunity to further conversations with countries in the Arab Spring, particularly Libya, or do you see that as having too many challenges? And my second question is, would the expansion of NATO lead to its inefficiency? Because many argue that furthering or increasing kind of the amount of members in NATO could lead to many logistical problems. Thank you.
Thank you very much for an interesting question. One question, quick question on my right.
Good morning, Josef Vulian, Slovakia. My question goes to Mr. President of Croatia. Excellency, during process of reintegration of Western Slavonia, Barania, and West Sirmium in 1996-1997, as far as I remember, two key principles were to reintegrate this region to the country of Croatia, were reconciliation, and the second one, holistic approach. I think that Croatian authorities were quite right concerned to the UNTAES authority. Whole Croatia should develop rather than only the region. So my question is, what would you recommend countries like Afghanistan to building their strategy in 2014 and beyond? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the last question over here, please.
Michael Baranowski of the German Marshall Fund of the United States. Thank you very much for excellent speeches and presentation. I was particularly intrigued by the point of President Turk that you made at the very end about the need for input, more democratic input in the EU in order for it to survive. Gideon Rahman recently argued in his op-ed in FT, Europe has yet to make Europeans, that we need indeed more common political identity for the Europe and EU to survive, and that we don't yet have it. My question to you is whether you agree with this analysis that we need European demos for Euro and Europe to survive, and what role would political leadership play, especially by statesmen like yourselves and other political leaders, in order to input a little bit more of the democratic process in the EU. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for very excellent questions. It feels like we can open whole new sessions for those questions, but since presidents have not a limited time, I would ask them for quick reaction to all of those in the same order as they spoke for the beginning. Pán prezident Gašparovič, nech sa páči.
Otázka? Na to nie, môžem odpovedať na tú otázku. Vzťah aliancie, vzťah Európskej únie k Rusku a nová politika aliancie. Ja si myslím, že základ, z čoho musíme vychádzať, je Rusko ako stále jeden z najväčších hráčov ekonomických, politických, ale aj vojenských na svete. Rusko nemôžeme ignorovať. Sme si všetci vedomí, a Rusi tiež, keď hovorím vo vzťahu k Európe. Európa Rusko potrebuje a Rusko potrebuje Európu. Poslednou dobou áno, sa ukazuje, že najmä v otázkach bezpečnostných sa snaží Rusko nájsť svoju politiku. Európska únia a aliancia ponúka spoluprácu. Do akej miery túto spoluprácu Rusko využije po nových voľbách, potom ako do kresla prezidenta nastúpi pán Putin, je otázka dlhodobej analýzy. Ja som povedal, že Spojené štáty ponúkajú Európe, aby sa dokázala sama postarať v niektorých predstavách o svoju existenciu, či už ekonomickú alebo obranu. A Spojené štáty hľadajú novú cestu a nový prístup, najmä v otázkach, kedy registrujú, že Rusko začína hľadať možnosti nových blokov, ako je BRIC. Ten úplne viditeľný krok je Austrália a nový kontingent armády Spojených štátov. Je to signál, že Spojené štáty reagujú na túto novú iniciatívu Ruska. A toto je budúcnosť, do akej miery vytvoríme pozície, aby sa nevytvárali nové silové aj ekonomické bloky a nevytvárali sa nové železné opony. Čiže v čom ja vidím do budúcna naše postoje? To sú skutočne otázky rokovaní a kompromisov. Tým rozhodujúcim je ešte stále surovinová energetická základňa Ruska, bez ktorej prakticky Európa nemôže existovať. A toto je ten dôležitý faktor, aby sme aj v aliancii, aj v Únii nehľadali takú stagnáciu pri hľadávaní rokovania s Rusmi. Musíme hľadať stále nové možnosti, ako s Rusmi hovoriť o všetkých otázkach, ktoré sa týkajú celého sveta. A ja si myslím, že sa to dá. Pretože aj v Rusku sa mení situácia postojov a názorov občanov, ktorí môžu politiku Ruska do určitej miery vo vzťahu k ostatnému okolitému svetu z pohľadu takých demokratických vízií meniť. Vedel si sa vás niekto predstaviť pred takým pol rokom alebo rokom, že na Červenom, na námestí pred Kremlom budú 100 000 demonštrácie proti Putinovi? Nikto. A také demonštrácie aj mimo hlavného mesta. Internet je jedna silná zbraň, ktorá môže pôsobiť negatívne, ale aj pozitívne. Tu je tá možnosť, ktorú ja vidím, že krajiny môžu dostať od svojich obyvateľov veľký výkričník a ich usmerniť na určitú cestu, o ktorej už nebudú rozhodovať len politici, ale budú rozhodovať aj občania. Čiže tým som chcel naznačiť, že mali by sme robiť všetko preto, aby sa nevytvárali nové bloky, ktoré budú navzájom súperiť, ale ktoré budú spolupracovať.
Ďakujem pekne, pán prezident.
No dobre, zobral si mi slovo.
Nech sa páči, pán prezident, nech sa páči. Okay, I'll apologize if I jumped too early to the end. There's still Arab Spring and our experience question, Rise of Asia, very interesting question on European identity for the future. Mr. President.
Well, very briefly on these questions. First, the rise of China obviously is one of those examples not new in history when a rise of a new great power creates changes and upheavals. Now, in our time, it is possible and necessary to react to this rise with appropriate global management. And appropriate global management, in my opinion, means a closer cooperation, as I explained earlier, between European Union, United States, and Russia. That does not mean a creation of a counterbalancing power. That doesn't mean a creation of a countervailing force. What it does mean is simply creation of a more sophisticated system of cooperation, which is necessary at the time when a rise of a new great power is a major factor of international life. Of course, one can go into details, but that will have to wait for another occasion. Second, on the question of global partnership for democracy in the case of Arab Spring and Libya and specific situations within the Arab world, I would say the Western world should engage with the democratic actors in the Arab world in a process which should be careful and patient. We should not presume that we have answers to the various questions which will arise in the process of transformation in the Arab world. We should not come with prescriptions. We should be very patient and good listeners, and we shall be partners to the extent possible and necessary. Again, this can lead to further specific questions which will have to be dealt with on another occasion. And finally, on the very interesting piece of Gideon Rahman in Financial Times a few days ago, I would like to say that his piece saying, which essentially says, we have created Europe, now we have to create Europeans, comes from a different part of, well, from a different historic experience. It obviously relates to the famous saying that when Italy was created, a nation state, there was a need to create Italians. Well, that was a different time, and we are not talking about creation of a nation state in Europe. There is no single ethnos in Europe, and there will be no single ethnos for many centuries to come. But there may be a process towards a more coherent demos in Europe, and that is something worth exploring and worthy of innovation. My suggestion here would be that we should go beyond the situation at which Euro Song Contest is the only televised pan-European activity. We should use media more intelligently. We should use television and other media for a pan-European debate on key issues of the European future. And I believe that the media haven't done enough. I'm not criticizing the media. I'm criticizing politics, politicians who do not have sufficient imagination and courage to bring key European issues towards to a global debate or a general debate in Europe. And obviously, at some point, I believe European citizens will have to elect their officials directly, the President of the European Council, perhaps, the President of the European Commission. Why not? We are not yet at the point at which such elections are a real possibility. But we have to discuss that as an option for the future, and I believe if we do that, we move towards a more coherent European demos with the understanding that a coherent European ethnos is not an option.
Thank you, Mr. President. And there was one very specific question for Croatian President Josipovic, but feel free to comment on any of other questions.
Yes, of course, thank you. I'll start with Eurosong. Eurosong is very interesting in content to show culture of different countries. But if you analyze what's going on there and who is voting for whom, then you can easily recognize that Croatia, in principle, gets the most points from Slovenia, Serbia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Macedonia. Slovenia gets the most points from Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Serbia, and Serbia gets the most points from Croatia, Slovenia, Bosnia and Herzegovina. The same similar result can be recognized for Scandinavian countries as well. What does it mean? That means that, yes, we still recognize our national identities. We have second circle, it's regional identity and regional support and understanding belonging to the similar cultural circle. And then there is, obviously, there should be third round, it's common European identity. And I agree with President Türk, we are not doing enough to build this third circle, to feel ourselves as Croats, as members of the region, as members of Europe. And it's a very important task for Europe, because if we are not capable to build this common identity, then the future of Europe is doubtful. Then let me go to the question. It's very specific, and I have to make one small introduction. During aggression on Croatia, 1/3 of Croatia was under occupation. 1/3. And military operation finished in 1995. And Croatia liberated most of the territory, but the east of Croatia, Eastern Slavonia, was still under occupation. And then there were alternatives. Shall we go to resolve it military, or shall we try to make some smart plan how to reintegrate this area into Croatian statehood? The basis for this peaceful reintegration was so-called Erdut, it's one place in Slavonia, agreement, under auspices of UN. And it's probably the most successful agreement ever performed by UN and countries involved. The project that started just after the military fights ended in 1998. And the result is that now Croatia is complete. All territories are back. But what was the biggest challenge is how to do it without new killings, new destroyings, peacefully. And this really big success is not only Croatian success, but the success of UN, it's success of local communities, local Serb community in Croatia was involved, and of course the cooperation of Republic of Serbia was also very important and significant. So it's internationally created success. Definitely experience of Erdut agreement supports the thesis that it's much better to negotiate for years than to fight for one single day. The result is very good, and it's not only political, it was not only political project, it was economical and global social project. Why? Because the goal was not to reintegrate just territory. The goal was to integrate people. That was important. And now in Eastern Slavonia live Croats, Serbs, Hungarians, Slovaks, Czechs, and the other in democratic society. Not without problems, we have still problems, but you cannot compare it with situation several years ago. And day by day, the situation is better and better. So this is one of experiences we can share with the other countries, also with countries of Northern Africa if necessary. And this type of project is something that is worth of consideration anywhere in the world when there is a war. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, well-deserved applause. Dear President, thank you very much for participating at GlobSec. Thank you very much for a very interesting introduction and good answers. I have to rush you to the little press brief we have now, and I want to ask all the audience to reassemble for a very interesting Smart Defense session in about half an hour. Thank you very much.